Some stories are so bizarre, so chilling, they defy explanation. Mysterious disappearances, terrifying curses, unexplained phenomena. Are they real, or just eerie legends? Join us as we uncover real-life mysteries that will keep you on edge. 1. The man who never existed. Tokyo, Japan, 1954. It was a normal morning at Haneda Airport. Passengers rushed to catch their flights. Customs officers worked non-stop, and the atmosphere buzzed with the energy of one of the busiest transport hubs in Asia. But amid the noise and movement, something strange happened. Something that would send shivers down the spines of even the most experienced airport staff. At around 10 a.m., a well-dressed middle-aged man approached the passport control counter. He was wearing an expensive gray suit, his hair neatly combed, and his face calm yet expressionless. He didn't look like a fraud or a criminal. He handed over his passport to the customs officer. The officer glanced at the document absent-mindedly, until his eyes locked onto a detail that made his blood freeze. The country listed on the passport was Taured. The officer frowned. Taured? Where was that? He had never heard of such a country before. Flipping through the pages, he saw everything seemed legitimate: visa stamps from various countries, official seals, and signatures from immigration officers. Pushpin, nothing looked forged. Pushpin, nothing seemed out of place. But there was one problem. Pushpin Taured didn't exist on any world map. A passport from a country that doesn't exist. The officer swallowed hard, trying to remain professional. He looked at the man and asked in Japanese, "Excuse me, sir, where is your country located?" The man raised an eyebrow, his voice deep and fluent in Japanese. "Taured? That's a strange question. It's between France and Spain. Surely, you've heard of it?" A chill ran down the officer's spine. How could someone be so certain about the existence of a country that had never appeared on any map? Security was called. A team of officers arrived within minutes. But the strangest part was yet to come. Everything was valid, yet it didn't exist. The man grew impatient and frustrated. He insisted that he was a businessman who had traveled to Tokyo many times before. He even presented Pushpin, a driver's license issued by Taured, Pushpin, a bank card from a major Taured-based bank. But when the officers contacted the bank, they got an unsettling answer. Pushpin, no such bank existed. Pushpin, no record of Taured could be found in any global registry. Pushpin, no historical data, no maps, no official documentation referenced such a nation. And yet, Pushpin, his passport had valid visa stamps, including one from Japan, which meant, Pushpin, he had been here before. Right? The mystery deepens. The man was taken to a special interrogation room. But he wasn't frightened, he was simply angry. "Are you playing games with me?" he said, irritation creeping into his voice. But Japanese authorities weren't playing games. They asked him to point out Taured on a map. The man confidently leaned over Pushpin, only to freeze. Pushpin, his expression shifted from frustration to shock. Pushpin, his hand trembled. "This can't be right. It should be here, right here." But Taured was nowhere to be found. Authorities placed him in a high-security hotel room under constant surveillance, with guards stationed outside his door. They planned to continue the investigation the next morning. But, Pushpin, by morning, he was gone. No way to escape. The guards swore nobody had entered or exited the room all night. Pushpin, the windows were locked from the inside. Pushpin, there were no hidden exits. Pushpin, there were no signs of struggle. When authorities opened the door, the room was empty. Pushpin, no man. Pushpin, no luggage. Pushpin, no passport. Everything, including all his documents, had vanished. As if he had never existed at all. What really happened? The Japanese government was left stunned. There was no rational explanation. Pushpin, some believe he was a time traveler, from the past or the future, where Taured had once existed or would exist someday. Pushpin, others think he slipped through a glitch in reality, an interdimensional traveler from a parallel universe. Pushpin, some say he was a highly skilled spy, using an elaborate fake identity. But if that were true, how did he disappear without a trace? To this day, no one knows the truth. Pushpin, where did he come from? Pushpin, why was he so convinced of Taured's existence? Pushpin, and most chillingly, where did he go? 2. The sounds from hell. A deep drilling project gone wrong. In 1989, A group of Soviet scientists embarked on a groundbreaking project in one of the most remote regions of Siberia. Their mission? Pushpin to drill deeper into the Earth's crust than anyone had ever done before. The location? The Kola Superdeep Borehole, a cold, desolate area far removed from civilization. Their goal? To study Earth's layers, temperatures, and geological structures. But what they uncovered was beyond anything science could explain. Because what they heard might just be the sounds of hell itself. The deepest hole ever drilled. Pushpin. They drilled over 12.2 kilometers, 7.5 miles, deep, breaking the world record. Pushpin temperatures underground were much higher than expected, exceeding 1.000 degrees Celsius, 1.832 degrees Fahrenheit. Pushpin. Then, strange malfunctions began happening. Pushpin equipment failed without explanation. Pushpin drill bits snapped as if hitting an unknown force. But the most terrifying discovery came when the scientists lowered a special microphone into the borehole to record seismic activity. At first, they heard normal subterranean sounds, shifting rock, distant tremors, nothing unusual. But then, Pushpin, a scream. Pushpin, then another. Pushpin, then hundreds, thousands. Agonizing cries, wailing, pleading, suffering. The researchers stared in horror. It sounded like an entire mass of tortured souls crying out in unimaginable pain. One scientist collapsed, trembling, as he whispered, speaking head, "We have opened the gates of hell. The project is shut down immediately." Pushpin. The recording lasted 72 seconds. Pushpin. But after the first 20 seconds, most scientists fled the lab, refusing to listen further. Pushpin. The lead scientist, Dr. Azakov, was said to have abandoned the project altogether, never speaking of it again. Shortly after, the Soviet government ordered the drilling site to be sealed. No one was allowed to go near it. Was it just a geological anomaly? Or had they truly uncovered something humans were never meant to hear? The night the shadows moved. One of the engineers, Alexei Ivanov, later claimed that after hearing the recording, something worse happened. Pushpin. He saw a dark mist rise from the borehole. Pushpin. It moved unnaturally, as if it had a will of its own. Pushpin. He heard whispers in an unknown language. Pushpin. He felt like something had awakened. A few weeks later, Pushpin. Some workers started reporting intense nightmares. Pushpin. One technician was found unconscious in the control room, mumbling in a language no one understood. Pushpin. Others began hearing disembodied voices, calling their names when no one was there. And then, Pushpin. One by one, scientists began quitting. Pushpin. The project was permanently shut down. Pushpin. The site was abandoned. What did they really hear? Many dismissed the story, calling it an elaborate hoax. Pushpin. Skeptics claim the screams were simply Earth's natural sounds, tectonic movements distorted by echoes. Pushpin. Others believe it was an intentional fake story to spread fear. But here's the problem. Pushpin. Multiple engineers from the Kola borehole have refused to speak about what really happened. Pushpin. The original recording? Vanished. Pushpin. Even those who claim it was a hoax cannot prove exactly how it was created. So, was it just underground noise, or the echoes of something far more sinister? The mystery remains unsolved. Even today, the Kola Superdeep Borehole remains one of the most eerie abandoned sites in the world. Pushpin. Some believe something was released that day. Pushpin. Others claim that, at night, whispers can still be heard near the site. Pushpin. And some believe the hole was sealed not to protect people from falling in. Pushpin. But to prevent something from coming out. Would you dare listen to the original recording? 3. The Vanishing Hotel Room. A mysterious disappearance in Paris. In 1889, a woman and her daughter traveled to Paris to attend a grand royal festival. Pushpin. They checked into a luxurious hotel, one of the most prestigious in the city. Pushpin. Their room number 347. Pushpin. It had a magnificent view of the Eiffel Tower. Pushpin. Everything seemed perfect, until the mother fell mysteriously ill. But what happened next was beyond terrifying. Because within hours, the mother would vanish, completely erased from existence. A room that never existed. That evening, the mother, Margaret Ellington, suddenly felt unwell. Pushpin. She complained of dizziness, nausea, and weakness. Pushpin. Her daughter, Emily, rushed to the hotel's front desk, pleading for a doctor. Pushpin. The hotel staff advised Emily to visit the nearby pharmacy to get medicine. Hurry back, your mother is very ill, the receptionist urged. Emily ran out into the streets of Paris, desperate to help her mother. But when she returned less than an hour later, Pushpin, her mother, was gone. Pushpin, and so was room 347. This room does not exist. Emily stared in shock. Pushpin. The hallway where room 347 had been was now just a blank wall. Pushpin. There was no door, no number, just smooth, empty wallpaper. Pushpin. She turned to the receptionist. Where's my mother? I need to get into room 347. Pushpin. The receptionist blinked in confusion. Pushpin. Then they said the words that made Emily's blood run cold. Revolving light, madam. There is no room 347 in this hotel. And you checked in alone. Revolving light. Emily felt the world collapse around her. Pushpin. She screamed, begged, insisted they were lying. Pushpin. But no one remembered her mother. Pushpin. There was no record of Margaret Ellington ever checking in. Pushpin. Her name was not in the hotel registry. Pushpin. Her luggage was gone. Pushpin. Even her passport had vanished. It was as if Margaret Ellington had never existed at all. A mother erased from history. Emily ran through the hotel, searching for anyone who had seen her mother. Pushpin. No guests remembered her. Pushpin. No staff recalled checking her in. Pushpin. Even the doctor who was supposed to examine her had never received such a request. Emily rushed to the police. She described her mother in detail. But when they checked immigration records, there was no record of a woman named Margaret Ellington entering France. Her mother was gone. Not just missing, completely erased from history. What really happened? Emily was sent to an asylum, labeled as mentally unstable. Pushpin. She spent years insisting that her mother had been real. Pushpin. She screamed that the hotel had done something to her. Pushpin. But no one believed her. Years later, a former hotel employee came forward with a shocking confession. Pushpin. That night, hotel management ordered all records of room 347 to be erased. Pushpin. They even had workers seal the door shut overnight, turning it into a blank wall. Pushpin. But why? What were they covering up? Theories and unsolved mysteries. Pushpin. Some believe Margaret Ellington died of a mysterious disease, one so dangerous that the hotel erased all evidence of her existence to avoid a scandal. Pushpin. Others claim she witnessed something she was never meant to see, and was silenced. Pushpin. Some even believe that she slipped into another dimension, vanishing from our reality. To this day, the truth has never been uncovered. Pushpin. Room 347 remains lost to time. Pushpin. The hotel still stands in Paris today, but no one dares speak of that night. Pushpin. And if you visit, be careful, because if you check into the wrong room, you may never check out. 4. The village that vanished overnight. On a freezing winter night in 1930, a group of Canadian hunters was making their way through the area near Anjikuni Lake, a remote and snow-covered land. This was an isolated region, far from civilization, inhabited only by Inuit tribes for hundreds of years. Leading the group was Joe LaBelle, an experienced hunter. He had visited the Anjikuni village many times before. It was a small settlement with about 30 people living in modest homes, friendly and welcoming to travelers passing through. But this time, everything was different. As the hunters approached the village, an eerie silence hung in the air. There were no lights, no barking dogs, no signs of life. The entire village had disappeared. Joe LaBelle shuddered as he stepped into the village. All the homes were still intact, but not a single person was inside. The fires in the hearths were still smoldering, as if they had been abandoned just moments ago. Meals were left unfinished on tables. Clothes were still hanging on lines, untouched. A rifle lay in the snow, unfired. The most chilling discovery was yet to come. All the sled dogs, once fierce, strong animals, were found dead, frozen solid in the snow. Despite having food nearby, they had starved to death. As they searched the village, they came across something even more terrifying. The graves in the village cemetery had been opened, but not from the outside. There were no shovel marks, no signs of digging. The soil was pushed outward, as if something had clawed its way out from beneath. Joe LaBelle and his group fled immediately and reported what they had seen to the nearest police outpost. When the authorities arrived, they were shocked. The village was exactly as LaBelle had described: empty houses, unfinished meals, frozen sled dogs, and graves that had been mysteriously disturbed. But there were no footprints leading away from the village. No blood, no signs of a struggle. It was as if the villagers had simply evaporated into thin air. Speculation ran wild. Had they fallen victim to a sudden illness, forcing them to flee into the frozen wilderness? Had an unknown force abducted them? Or had they simply disappeared into another reality? The Inuit people have legends of spirits that steal people away, taking them into the sky. That same night, strange lights were seen in the sky above Anjikuni Lake. Some described them as glowing orbs floating across the horizon. Others swore they saw shadowy figures moving under the moonlight. To this day, the missing villagers of Anjikuni have never been found. No bodies, no survivors, no explanations. The village remains abandoned, its mystery unsolved. 5. The girl in the photograph. In 1994, the Williams family moved into an old house in suburban Pennsylvania. The house had been abandoned for years, but its large space and historical charm made it irresistible. Richard Williams was a university professor, his wife Linda a historian, and their 7-year-old daughter Emma was an energetic, curious child. They were excited about their new home, but from the moment they stepped inside, something felt off. While cleaning the attic, Emma found an old photograph buried under a pile of dusty boxes. It was a framed portrait, faded with age. The girl in the picture was around 16 years old, wearing a Victorian-style white dress. Her dark eyes were large and hollow, staring straight ahead. Wherever you moved, they seemed to follow you. "Mommy, who is this girl?" Emma asked as she carried the picture downstairs. Linda shuddered the moment she saw it. Something about the photograph made her uneasy, a creeping sense of dread settling in her chest. She took the frame from Emma's hands and placed it face down on the shelf. That night, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered randomly, even though the electrical system had just been checked. Objects were found in places they hadn't been left. The air in the house felt heavy, suffocating, as if an unseen presence was watching. But the worst part was Emma. She began talking to someone who wasn't there. At night, Linda and Richard would hear their daughter whispering in the dark, giggling softly. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" Linda asked. Emma looked up with a bright smile. "Annabelle." Linda's heart nearly stopped. "Who is Annabelle?" "The girl in the photograph," Emma said matter-of-factly. That night, Linda and Richard decided to throw the photo away. They took it outside and placed it in the garbage bin. The next morning, it was back on the living room table. At first, they thought Emma had retrieved it, but when they asked her, she shook her head. "I didn't touch it," she said. Then, one night, Emma woke up screaming. Linda rushed into her room to find her daughter sitting up in bed, trembling, staring at the doorway. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Mommy, she's here." The next morning, Linda made up her mind to investigate the house's history. She searched archives, spoke to neighbors, and eventually found what she was looking for. The house once belonged to the Everly family in the late 1800s. Their daughter, Annabelle Everly, had disappeared in 1863. Her last known photograph matched the one Emma had found, and no one had ever found her body. Linda's hands shook as she read the old newspaper articles. Families who had lived in the house after the Everlys often spoke of seeing a girl in white. They reported flickering lights, objects moving on their own, and an eerie feeling of being watched. That night, as Linda walked past the hallway mirror, she saw something moving behind her. A pale figure standing in the shadows. A girl, wearing a white dress. Linda spun around. Nothing was there. She turned back to the mirror. Annabelle was closer. Watching, the mirror cracked, and the photograph fell from the shelf, its glass shattering. Across the broken surface, one word was scrawled in dust. "Help me." Terrified, Linda and Richard decided to burn the photograph. As the flames consumed it, the house shook, the windows rattled, the air grew ice cold, and a distant, sorrowful scream echoed through the walls. Then, silence. Emma never spoke of Annabelle again. The house felt normal once more. But a month later, a neighbor found an old photograph in their basement. A picture of a girl in a white dress, with dark, piercing eyes. 6. The Black-Eyed Children. On a cold winter night in 1996, journalist Brian Bethel was sitting in his parked car outside a shopping center in Abilene, Texas. It was around 9:30 p.m. and he was writing a check when he suddenly heard a soft knock on the window. Startled, he turned to see two children standing outside his car. One was about 9 years old, the other around 12. They wore oversized hooded sweatshirts, their faces shadowed by the dim parking lot lights. A strange chill crept down Brian's spine. Despite the cold night, they showed no signs of being affected by the weather. Their posture was unnatural, too stiff, too still. When Brian hesitated to open the window, the older child spoke first. "Sir, could you give us a ride? We just want to go home." Their voices were calm, expressionless, too steady for children. Brian felt something was terribly wrong. His instincts screamed at him to drive away immediately. But before he could react, the older boy took a step closer. "Sir, we need to get in your car. We can't come in unless you allow us to." That's when Brian looked directly at them for the first time. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Their eyes, completely black. No whites, no irises, just endless, soulless darkness. Brian's hands trembled as he instinctively reached for the door handle. But then he stopped himself. A deep, primal fear gripped him, as if he were staring at something that wasn't human. The older boy's tone became more insistent. "Just open the door. We won't hurt you." Brian's pulse pounded in his ears. Every fiber of his being told him to escape. Without another word, he threw his car into reverse and sped away. As he glanced at his rearview mirror, revolving light, the children were gone. Revolving light, the unsettling pattern. After his terrifying encounter, Brian began researching and found other reports of black-eyed children appearing across the United States. Their pattern was always the same. Pushpin, they appear in pairs, often one slightly older than the other. Pushpin, they knock on car windows or front doors late at night. Pushpin, they ask to be let in, but always insist that you must invite them first. Pushpin, the moment people notice their pitch black eyes, an overwhelming sense of fear takes over. Pushpin, no one knows what happens if someone actually lets them in. A fatal mistake. In 2015, a woman named Adele from Vermont made a horrifying mistake. At 2 a.m., she heard knocking at her front door. Half asleep, she opened it without thinking. There stood two children, dressed in thick winter coats. Their faces were lowered, their voices flat and emotionless. "Ma'am, can we come in? We're lost." Adele felt uneasy, but she stepped aside to let them enter. The moment the door closed behind them, a deep chill spread through the house. Pushpin, the lights flickered violently. Pushpin, the fireplace went out, though the flames had been strong just seconds before. Pushpin, the children stood still in the middle of her living room. Adele suddenly felt an intense headache. Her nose started bleeding. She turned to ask them a question, but they were gone. From that night on, her health deteriorated rapidly. Within 3 months, she was diagnosed with terminal leukemia. She believed it was because she had let them in. Who, or what, are they? Pushpin, some believe they are demons, requiring permission to enter a home. Pushpin, others say they are lost souls, wandering between dimensions. Pushpin, and some think they are not human at all, something alien, observing us from the shadows. But one thing remains certain. Revolving light, if you ever hear a knock at your door late at night. Revolving light and you see children with pitch black eyes staring at you. Revolving light, do not let them in. 7. The Mothman and the Omen of Disaster. On November 12, 1966, a group of grave diggers was working late at night in Clendenin, West Virginia. It was a normal evening, until one of them saw a dark figure fly above them. Pushpin, it was massive. Pushpin with huge, bat-like wings. Pushpin and glowing red eyes. Chills ran through their bodies as they watched it disappear into the sky. 3 days later, it appeared again. The terror at Point Pleasant. On November 15, 1966, two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Millette, were driving near an abandoned TNT factory in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. That's when they saw it. Pushpin, a towering humanoid creature, over 7 feet tall. Pushpin, massive wings folded against its back. Pushpin, eyes glowing a deep, piercing red. Pushpin, it was staring at them, watching, terrified. Roger slammed on the gas. But as they sped away, revolving light, the creature unfolded its wings and took off. Revolving light. Pushpin, it chased their car at over 100 miles per hour. Pushpin. Despite their speed, it kept up effortlessly, gliding just above them. Pushpin. It never flapped its wings, just soared silently. Linda screamed, "It's following us." Only when they reached the city limits did it finally disappear into the night. The Silver Bridge collapse. Pushpin. For over a year, sightings of the Mothman continued. Pushpin. More than 100 people reported seeing it lurking around Point Pleasant. Pushpin. Some claimed it appeared outside their windows at night. Pushpin. Others swore they heard eerie, distorted voices after seeing its red eyes. Pushpin. Then, on December 15, 1967, disaster struck. During rush hour, the Silver Bridge, connecting West Virginia and Ohio, suddenly collapsed. Pushpin. The structure gave way in less than 20 seconds. Pushpin. Cars plunged into the freezing Ohio River. Pushpin. 46 people lost their lives. Pushpin. Survivors later claimed that the Mothman had been seen perched on the bridge just hours before it fell. Had it been a warning? Or was it something far more sinister? A harbinger of doom? Pushpin. In 1986, before the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, people reported seeing a winged creature with red eyes near the reactor. Pushpin. In 2001, just before the 9/11 attacks, similar sightings were reported around the Twin Towers. Pushpin. In 2011, before the Japanese tsunami, witnesses described the same dark winged figure in the sky. Could the Mothman be a warning of impending tragedy? Or is it the cause? Because if it ever appears in your city, revolving light, something terrible is about to happen. 8. The Cursed Dybbuk Box. In 2001, Kevin Manis, an antique dealer in Oregon, USA, attended an estate sale at the home of an elderly Jewish woman who had recently passed away. The woman had survived the Holocaust and later settled in America. Among the items for sale, Kevin noticed a small wooden wine cabinet, intricately carved and aged with time. It seemed like an ordinary antique, but the moment he touched it, he felt an uneasy sensation crawl up his spine. As he prepared to pay, the seller, the deceased woman's granddaughter, gave him a chilling warning. Pushpin. You must never open it. But Kevin only laughed. To him, it was just an old box. He had no idea that he had just purchased one of the most infamous haunted objects in history. The box is opened. The moment Kevin brought the Dybbuk box home, strange things began happening. Pushpin. He had vivid, terrifying nightmares every night. Pushpin. His house grew unnaturally cold. Even in the summer, Pushpin. Dark shadows flickered in the corners of his vision. Pushpin. He heard faint whispers when he was alone. But Kevin wasn't superstitious. So, out of curiosity, he opened the box. Inside, he found a few strange items. Pushpin. A lock of hair. Pushpin. 2 ancient coins. Pushpin. A tiny statue. Pushpin. A faded, yellowed parchment covered in Hebrew writing. Pushpin. A strong, putrid smell filled the air. Pushpin. And then, his lights flickered violently. Pushpin. A deep, chilling wind swept through the house, even though all the windows were shut. The haunting escalates. From that night on, Kevin's life became a nightmare. Pushpin. Objects in his home moved on their own. Pushpin. Doors slammed shut violently, even when there was no breeze. Pushpin. Every night at exactly 3 a.m., he heard knocking at his front door, but no one was ever there. Pushpin. One morning, he woke up with deep scratches running down his back. Pushpin. He often felt something breathing next to him while he slept. Worse, his mother suffered a sudden stroke on the same day she touched the box. Terrified, Kevin decided to sell the Dybbuk box on eBay, warning future buyers of its curse. The next owner's nightmare. The box was purchased by Jason Haxton, a museum curator and researcher. Pushpin. Within days, Jason began suffering from skin rashes and uncontrollable coughing. Pushpin. He often woke up gasping for air, as if something was suffocating him. Pushpin. His electronics malfunctioned constantly. Pushpin. Visitors to his house reported seeing a dark shadow lurking in his basement. Realizing he had made a terrible mistake, Jason reached out to Jewish mystics, who confirmed his worst fears. Pushpin. The box contained a Dybbuk, an evil spirit from Jewish folklore. Pushpin. It had been sealed away long ago, but Kevin had unknowingly released it. Pushpin. And now, it was attached to whoever possessed the box. To stop the curse, Jason had the Dybbuk box resealed and buried in an undisclosed location. Since then, no one knows where it is. But many believe that if someone ever finds and opens it again, revolving light, they won't live long enough to regret it. Revolving light. 9. The man who called from 2027. In early 2021, a mysterious TikTok account appeared under the name Unico Sobreviviente, the only survivor. Pushpin, the user, claimed he was trapped in the year 2027. Pushpin, his videos showed completely empty cities, no people, no cars, no animals. Pushpin, yet the power still worked. The internet was still running. Pushpin, it was as if he was the last person alive on Earth. At first, everyone assumed it was a hoax. But the more he posted, the more terrifying the mystery became. A city without people. Pushpin, he filmed the streets of Madrid, empty. Pushpin, he walked through a fully stocked supermarket, silent. Pushpin, he entered hospitals, police stations, train stations, abandoned. Pushpin, everything looked untouched, as if people had simply vanished. But when viewers asked him to prove his claim, he did something chilling. Pushpin, they asked him to go to famous landmarks. Pushpin, to show the time on clocks. Pushpin, to hold up handwritten notes to confirm the videos were live. Pushpin, he did all of it. Pushpin, and yet, no one was there. 2 parallel timelines? Viewers noticed something bizarre. Pushpin, in his world, the clocks and calendars all read 2027. Pushpin, yet somehow, he could still upload videos and respond to comments in our timeline, 2021. Pushpin, people visited the same locations he filmed, expecting them to be empty, but they weren't. Pushpin, he was in the same place, but in a different time. When someone messaged him, he replied, "Revolving light, I am in your world, but you cannot see me." Revolving light. Did he step into a time rift? Pushpin, some believe he is trapped in an alternate reality, a version of our world where humanity disappeared. Pushpin, others think he accidentally fell into a time loop, unable to return to his correct year. Pushpin, and some even suggest he is stuck in a simulation, living in a digital copy of our world. But the scariest part? Revolving light, he says that every night, he hears whispers. Revolving light, he feels like he is not alone. Revolving light, something else is still out there. Would you dare wake up one day to find yourself alone in the world? 10. The Winchester Mystery House. At the end of the 19th century, Sarah Winchester, heiress to the massive Winchester rifle fortune, suffered devastating losses. Pushpin, her husband, died of tuberculosis. Pushpin, her only daughter, died shortly after birth. Pushpin, overwhelmed by grief, she turned to a psychic for answers. The medium told her, "Revolving light, your family is cursed. The spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles will never leave you. Your only escape is to keep building, and never stop." Revolving light. Sarah believed it, and so, she built a house that never ended. A house that defied logic. Pushpin, she purchased an 8-room farmhouse in San Jose, California. Pushpin, construction began immediately, and it never stopped for 38 years. Pushpin, carpenters worked day and night, adding rooms, hallways, and staircases without a plan. Pushpin, there were no blueprints, no master design, only endless construction. By the time Sarah Winchester died, the house had transformed into a massive labyrinth. Pushpin, 160 rooms. Pushpin, 10.000 windows. Pushpin, 2.000 doors. Pushpin, 47 fireplaces. Pushpin, 47 staircases, but many led to nowhere. It was a house designed to confuse spirits. The strange architecture. The Winchester Mystery House was like no other place in the world. Pushpin, doors opened into walls. Pushpin, stairs led straight into ceilings. Pushpin, hallways twisted into endless loops. Pushpin, rooms had no clear purpose. Pushpin, windows were built into the floors. Pushpin, some doors, when opened, led to a deadly drop to the ground below. Why was the house designed this way? Pushpin, Sarah believed she was being haunted. Pushpin, she thought spirits were constantly chasing her. Pushpin, she slept in a different room each night to throw them off. But did it work? The haunting of the Winchester house. Pushpin, workers reported ghostly whispers echoing through the halls. Pushpin, chandeliers swung on their own. Pushpin, footsteps could be heard in empty rooms. Pushpin, some claimed to see shadowy figures moving through the corridors. Even after Sarah's death, the hauntings never stopped. Visitors to the house have reported Pushpin feeling cold spots in random areas. Pushpin hearing strange knocks at night. Pushpin seeing figures dressed in Victorian clothing. One worker, alone in the house after dark, saw a man standing at the end of a hallway. Pushpin he turned a corner and disappeared. The legend lives on. Today, the Winchester Mystery House is a tourist attraction. Pushpin people travel from all over the world to explore its haunted halls. Pushpin ghost hunters claim it's one of the most active paranormal sites in America. Pushpin some say Sarah Winchester's spirit still roams the house. Was Sarah truly cursed? Or was she just a grieving woman consumed by fear? But one thing is certain. Revolving light if you step into the Winchester house. Revolving light you might not find your way out.